Yo guys, what's up? Crowley here, and sadly, I'm not making a battles montage or a battles challenge this week due to me not having played as much last week or not really having a feeling my games are that great. So instead, I'm going to talk about the balance changes in this video, as well as give my opinion on them. So I'll start as follow. I'll start with the nerfs and my opinion of them, and then I'll go by the buffs and why I think they're great. So without any ado, I'll start with the nerf section right now. So with the nerfs, we start with Unicorn, and they have decreased Unicorn's trap damage from 500 to 425, which is a pretty big nerf actually, and it's, if I can be very honest, it's deserved because Corn can be very frustrating to play against. I'm not really sure I fully agree with the trap nerf because, well, Corn is only pretty annoying late game in stall maps, like small maps, for example, especially on small maps. So Corn wasn't really that great of a problem, in my opinion. Like, sure, he's annoying and frustrating to play. Maybe 450 would have been a bit of a better nerf, but the direction is sound, and I do overall agree that this is a pretty good nerf that keeps Corn in place. So currently, Cupcake is the strongest phobia in the game because of the free buff and the surprise element. And the nerf that Cupcake has received is a lock on her ability, which I am not sure was the right thing. Yeah, sure, the nerf is deserved, but I don't really agree that a 2-key buffs more than a 4-key, even if it's a one-time thing. Even if the buff is more overloaded with a heal additionally. I don't really agree with this, and I would have preferred if Cupcake would have buffed for 100 without a lock. And the reason is that Cupcake is a Muffin Top clone, so Muffin Top is used to heal and cleanse poison, and I think Cupcake should have had the same role rather than being a buffer, and it's still a buffer, so I disagree with this nerf, but it's still good it's nerfed, let's say. So next nerf is Gonzo Bonzo, and yes, I have to pronounce it that way. I'll do it again. Gonzo Bonzo, and they have nerfed his buff damage to 250, which is a good nerf, and I think it's a step in the right direction for Gonzo. And if Gonzo's still oppressive, he can get a nerf to 200 in my opinion. But as I said about Cupcake, I still think it's weird that Gonzo Bonzo gives less damage with his buff than Cupcake for 2 keys more, even if you can use Gonzo more than Cupcake. But I still think it's kind of unfair, so that's my 2 cents on Gonzo Bonzo. But it is definitely a step in the right direction with the Gonzo meta currently, so this is a well-deserved nerf and I agree with it. Bluelian. So, I am very, very happy because I really hate this little bastard. He is very annoying to play against, he has an overloaded kit, and he was able to spam his spas, but not anymore because they have nerfed his cooldown to 2 turns. So now Bluelian should be diveable and should be easier to punish rather than to keep a stall game on small maps with Unicorn or Stabby to keep Reflect up or to keep the traps up, so, or on bigger maps where you can just retreat 1 or 2 phobies and attack with the rest, and it's just way more fair towards other healers and way more fair towards other 5 keys because this now will free up options, and I'm super happy with this nerf because, again, screw you, Bluelian. I hate you. You deserve this. In your face. So now we have Boss. This is probably one of my favorite overpowered phobies along with Gonzo Bonzo, and I don't fully agree with the nerfs. So they nerfed his health to 2000, and they nerfed his area of effect damage and active damage of that, for special, to 275. So yeah, overall I agree Buzz was way too tanky, but his damage was Okay, what made Boss's damage absurd was Gonzo Bonzo, and Gonzo Bonzo is nerfed, so I don't agree with the damage nerf. I can hear people say, yeah, but Scritch and Cupcake still buff by 300. And yeah, that's fair, but now it doesn't one-shot an Oculus anymore. Or Gonzo Boss do not one-shot Repeller anymore, which is pretty big. So those are buffed indirectly. And you can say that Boss deserved the nerf, and I think this is a good direction for Boss because I think Day 1 Boss is a tanky area of effect defense breaker. However, I am not really agreeing with the damage nerf. I think they just should have nerfed his health to 1950, so excuse my English, or 1950. So I think that would have been a better nerf, but that's me. So on to Akira, as that's the last one of the nerf list. So about Akira, his special got nerfed by having a 2-turn lock, which is pretty great, because now Furkin counters him, and I really think Furkin is now better than Gonzo Bonzo, also due to this nerf, also due to the boss nerf. Furkin is going to be great this meta. But anyway, I digress. So the problem of Akira was mainly that he's very oppressive on big maps. He can drag his entire team and the enemy team towards him. So that allows pretty easy plays. And it's still going to be strong. It's still going to be great. But now we have room to respond to what Akira does. Though I'm not sure if this nerf is enough, and I'd either suggest to nerf his health to 1500, or by the way, to nerf his special cooldown to 4 turns, that you have a room to punish Akira for committing to his pool, because I think he still is going to be dominating, but just not as annoyingly as he did in the past. So with the first buff, Rusty. So I'm pretty happy with this little booger's buffs, because I was thinking personally to make his range of a special 2, because that would make it a bit more fair for 2 keys. But they did something else which I agree with also. They've turned Rusty into a 1 key. So this is pretty great to have a self-sacrificial debuff for 1 key right now. So I have a feeling people will use Rusty way more right now. So this buff is very, very, very bad, and I've expected way more for the Jackalope boogers than they have received. So the overall buff for Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and the Jackalope King was to receive a pack attack bonus of 125, but the Jackalopes are still not unique. The Jackalopes still suck in combat. And I'm aware that not every 2-key has to be Cassowary Corn-like, or it doesn't have to do the damage of Wiggy or Gesundheit. I understand, but even for a Resurrect Phobie, or for what they are supposed to do, they still fail at that job, and Ted and Jill are way better. So I still really would like to see their stats to be more unique, better, or maybe that they give King special bonuses when they connect on the map or where they group up. So I really hope that it actually will become a pack attack rather than a stupid bonus, and I'm not sure this is the good direction for them either, but I think it's a start. They need way more work than this. So now we have Mino.
My boy
Mino. So his damage got increased to 425. It's not a lot to discuss. It's just a nice quality of life buff for this guy. It will definitely make him more viable, but Minotaur still doesn't stand out in the crowd compared to Radiator, Werewolf, Cassowary. It's nice, but yeah, it's still kind of mid. So Mikey got a health buff to 900, which is pretty great because Gesundheit has 600 health. So now you can have a tankier Gesundheit, which is more sustainable, which is pretty good. So I think microscopic can actually be viable because the germs are pretty underrated, if I'm honest, in favor of Corn and Stabby and I don't know what. But on some maps where you want to play fast, need the damage, and don't want to use Gravedigger for whatever reason, you can use the germs. So I think microscopic can see some usage, but it's not too great still. So Tick has received one of the better buffs in the game. So Tick now has 2 movement. His stats were so terrible, so bad, and it's the vanilla Minotaur stats. However, he has an AoE disease, but Tick was rarely able to hit that disease. So now with 2 movement, Tick can position himself way easier. He can also reposition himself out of danger, and his low stats are not a problem anymore. So Tick right now is very, very good and can be a good answer to Stabby right now. So I think people will use him a lot right now because cheap disease is hard to come by. So nothing really changed here, but Misanthrope got a 350 damage boost right now. Nice, but nothing to write home about. If this was Spud, however, this would have been pretty big. But no, it's Misanthrope. So, not really sure. Maybe he should have received a health buff instead. But it's okay. His stats are way better right now. I cannot complain. The big problem of the Speedolas was that you had a big risk but a low reward, because when one of the Speedolas died, you'd lose your damage buff, and the damage buff was pretty low with plus 100. So you'd pay either 5 or 6 keys to give the other 1 movement and 100 damage, and it's not too big. So this buff has focused on giving them even more damage, which makes the trade-off way worth it, especially when they're alive. So I think this buff is very great, and I'm happy they have received it overall. So Derpy Bedside Manners finally got the buff he deserved, to now set him a bit off of Unbearable and Snappy. So his damage has increased to 440, which is pretty big. So now he's worth the 5 keys, which is nice. And he can now differentiate himself from the 4-key undead turrets, as I've said earlier. A nice change. Nothing too big, but it's pretty nice. Smiley has received a 50 damage buff on her disease. Pretty nice, actually, which punishes more, because Smiley's pretty passive unless you use paddles. But I'm not really sure if Smiley needed a change. Probably a bit, but Smiley is very hard to use, so it's a nice change for newer players who receive Smiley. But I'm not really sure what the devs were thinking here. Like, I don't disagree with Smiley getting a buff at all, because it deserves it, but I think other phobies needed it more than Smiley. But I'm happy to see Smiley buffed at the end of the day. Jaws having his luck removed means that he can stack faster, which is a good change. It's nothing too big, but it's a great quality of life change, which Jaws has pretty much deserved. Charon, I have no idea how to pronounce his name, so I'll just do Charon, like the annoying bossy Karens of the memes. His damage has been changed from 325 to 350. It's an okay buff, just like Misanthrope. It's nothing to write home about, really. Joining the 2 movement squad is Lila, and she also has her health nerfed to 1500. Not bad, because it's now literally a dimensional disease Ivy. Literally. So it's gonna be pretty excellent. And I'm seeing this becoming meta. People who have leveled Lila are going to use it over Ivy if they need to combat specific dimensional users or another Lila. But this thing is gonna be meta, I'm just assuring you already. So So Tiny Tim has received a damage buff to 500. So Tiny Tim's entire shtick is to switch between having twice as much HP as attacking, but his attack stat is still mediocre, so to say. And I have a feeling the devs held back. It's gonna be way better, and it can punish way better right now, but still, 500 damage is not really worth the trade-off if your clone, Moly Bully, has 550 damage. This is by far the most disappointing buff. So Blondie is Hydra with worse health, but a debuff, a special. So it underperforms, and guess what they gave it? Plus 50 damage. So, well, no. If you want to differentiate Blondie from Hydra, and you want Hydra to be more tanky, just at least give Blondie more damage than just plus 50. It should at least be 850 if you try to differentiate it from Hydra. But, well, who I am, I hope at least that this is the right direction for Blondie, and I hope to see more buffs later. Zappy is getting a health buff, which is pretty much needed because now it can reflect and do its job way better against some mechanicals. It's a great change, actually. This makes Zappy pretty viable, because I always said that Zappy is a bit low on HP to reflect, but now it can do its job pretty well, so you're gonna see it more. One of Ogre's main problems was that his passive rarely triggered or triggered at wrong moments. So what they did was make the rage trigger when the heart is 4000 HP or lower. And they've increased his rage buff to 350, which is pretty insane. So now, yes, sure, Ogre's still a gimmick, but it's easier to use in higher ranks like some of Ulfir's right now, as well as it's worth the 7 keys in some occasions when you're being rushed. Because now Ogre's easier to use, and I think you'll see him more, but he'd still remain a sort of gimmick, I feel. Plus 25 in damage doesn't seem a lot, but the ability to one-shot an Oculus is pretty great. And survive it, by the way, because Sparky is pretty tanky. So overall, a pretty great electric buff in my opinion, and I think this makes Sparky a pretty good choice for certain picks and in certain occasions. The last member of the two movement squad, Bogard, is gonna be pretty great. The bombs were pretty insane already, even though they have a high cooldown. But Bogard being 2 movement it's gonna give more options for the 2-2 category in the 7 keys. So I'm very excited to test him when the patch comes out. I think I'll spam him a bit. And I have a feeling he can be pretty great. So I'll have a feeling he'll show up way more, especially since the bombs can counter Brony. So be sure to see this guy often. Yes, here we are, and I know you guys expect me to talk about this, so I'll do the short version because this deserves a video of its own, but I did it, guys. Oopsie Baby got a 400 damage buff, and I'm extremely happy with this, and this is very important and pretty big, actually. So, to explain, Oopsie Baby is a punish phobie, and he likes to zone and have control over the battlefield, so having more damage will help him better, especially when an Oculus does the same and costs 3 keys less. So now Oopsie Baby is an Oculus, but better, which is pretty nice. So yeah, it's a good buff, and again, I think I'll make a video of this on its own, so please bear with me. Fleshcrawler got the very much deserved cooldown buff. So the thing with Fleshcrawler is I'm pretty afraid that if they buff his HP, this thing can just never die because it deals so much freaking damage. And it sustains all of its health back whenever it uses its special. So I'm pretty happy to see its special getting the cooldown buff. I think people will start noticing Fleshcrawler, but not really sure what to make out of it. And last but not least, Russell. So Russell's poison is now 250 per tick, which is pretty huge. So Russell is not the best phobie because of the heal spas and healers, so you can easily counter Russell's strategy. However, this is still pretty big. Because now you can still dive Russell, but you will face consequences more because you'll eat 200 more damage in total. It's a pretty big buff actually. So that sums it up for today. Thank you guys for watching the video. If you have anything which you want to share, please do so. Please also like and subscribe so you can follow my content. Let me know your opinions about the changes, and I will make the Oopsie Baby video soon, as in trying to explain why this buff is so important to the meta. So anyway, thank you for checking out the video, and I'll see you next week with the last battles challenge video. Bye, take care, and have a great day. Thank you so much.